What if I told you that making more money has less to do with the amount of leads that you have and more to do with what you're doing inside your business? By the end of this episode, I'm going to share with you the 4 things that you can do that will help increase your bottom line. Sound fair? Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Success Unleashed show. The other day, I was in California visiting with a client of mine. Now, this client does about $15 million a year in sales. The problem that they have is not generating money. The problem that they have is keeping money. Now, imagine running a $15 million a year business on a 5% margin. Think about that for a minute. That's not a lot of money, especially for the amount of work that goes into it. The company currently has 46 employees. So payroll is high, overhead is high, and they're having to deal with all these things that are cutting into their bottom line. Now remember, the purpose of your business is not to make money, it's to keep money. And if you want to keep more money, you have to learn to run a more efficient business. Now think about this, for example. When the phone rings, who answers it? When there's an estimate or a bid to do, who goes and does it? When there's follow-up that needs to be done, who's in charge of it? When there's bills that need to be paid, who's paying them? When there's jobs that need to be done, who's doing them? Do you see what I mean? How many of these questions that I just asked are you answering? Me. Now, you may lie to yourself and say, oh, well, I hired John. John's supposed to help me with sales. But you and I both know that when you look at the true numbers, John's close rate is less than 10%, which means he's not actually making you money, he's costing you money. There's another contractor that I work with, and bless him, I'm not going to say his name, but bless him, he's got a decent sized sales team. He's got 5 guys. Well, he recently bought Salesforce, and Salesforce is a CRM for managing sales, right? The sales process. And what he realized last month is that out of 84 potential opportunities to close a deal, so 84 appointments, he closed 7. 7 out of 84. Now, do you think that's a sustainable model? No, it gets worse because when he dug into the numbers, what he realized is he, in some way, shape, or form, was responsible for 6 of the 7 sales. Back to the question at hand. Want to learn how to make more money? Learn to be more efficient. And what I really want to focus on is your team. Now, the first issue that most contractors have is a lack of accountability. That's right, I'm talking to you. You're Mr. Nice Guy. You're Mr. like, oh, John, you're coming in late. Yeah, well, don't do it again. Oh, your cat died. Oh, I feel sorry for you. But don't do it again like you did last week and the week before. Oh, you were supposed to call those guys. You didn't call them? Well, don't worry about it. I'm pissed at you, but I'm going to call them because I know they need to be called, right? And you're constantly letting this environment of excuses take over your business. Imagine if you had accountability. Imagine if your people knew that you were going to hold them accountable to something. How much different would they perform? Or maybe they leave, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, right? Accountability. Now, if you're going to implement accountability, which I'm all for accountability, trust me. If you're going to implement accountability, make sure you have 2 things in place first. The first thing is, what are they responsible for? And the second thing is, how are they responsible for it? In other words, what do you expect them to do? So if you have a sales guy, for example, and his job is to sell, how do you hold him accountable to selling? You can't just say, hey, did you sell any jobs today? Well, that's great, right? No, every single week he should have a target number of either outbound or inbound calls he needs to make, right? What is outbound? You're dialing out, inbound, answering the phone, right? And a certain number of calls or text messages or social media posts or something that can generate conversations, right? He should have a certain number of appointments every week, and he should have a target dollar amount or number of closes every single week. If you're not tracking that, how are you going to know that the person is performing to the level that you need them to perform to? i.e., why did you hire them to begin with? Accountability. And you can have accountability across the board. with the person doing your finances, with your office manager, with your project manager. All of these people can be held accountable, right? So you need to institute some level of accountability into your business. And it's probably more than you're doing right now. Your job is not to be their friend. Your job is to get them to perform. Sound about right? Again, number one, accountability. Number two, poor communication. You got the team. You got them in the right places. You got the right people. They know what they need to do and how they need to do it. But poor communication. One person's doing one thing that they think needs to be done. The other person is doing something different because they think it needs to be done this way. They end up crossing channels and it ends up costing them time and money. Imagine if you're trying to seal a deal on a job, you're calling the potential client, your salesperson is calling the potential client, but you're both telling them two different things. What about managing a sub on a project? You're telling them one thing, your project manager's telling them something else. Poor communication. When I was working as a police officer, we had radios, right? That's how we communicated, especially across the city, right? If I didn't understand what I needed to do, I would ask, can you repeat? We would use codes, right? It was 10-9, right? Can you repeat what you just said? Because I don't understand it. So what would be the point of me trying to do something I don't understand how to do, right? So communication. How do we deal with communication? Very simply, if your business is large, if you're an 8-figure guy, this would be done within teams. If you're a mid-7 or lower guy, you can do this as a group. This is what it looks like, okay? Y'all get together as a group, either a sales team, a marketing team, or just a team as a whole. What are we accomplishing today? How are we going to accomplish? What role are you playing in accomplishing that? Simple questions, right? But simple questions that will help you overcome a lack of communication, have the clarity that people need to move forward and perform what it is that you need them to do. Number 3, inefficiency. Inefficiency. You would be surprised to know how many contractors run a business that's inefficient. In fact, depending on the study, anywhere from 75 to 84% of contractors run inefficient businesses. And if your business is inefficient, it's costing you time and it's costing you money. Now, what do we do when we deal with inefficiency? Well, we need to find a way to do it better, right? So let's take a plumbing company, for example. If the plumbing company is doing new build plumbing, they're going to do a rough-in and then they're going to do a final. When they bid the job knowing what materials they were going to need for the job, right? So an inefficient model would be them showing up at the job, trying to figure out if they have everything on the truck that they need. They don't. Somebody or somebodies need to go to the supply house or the Home Depot, grab the supplies, come back. 2 hours burned. If it's 2 guys, you're paying them $25 an hour. That's $200 in one day. Inefficiencies, not knowing what to do or how to do it. Then they have to call because they don't have a clear plan on what needs to happen first. They don't know which pipe goes where. They don't know how to fit this certain fitting. Like inefficiencies. And so these dollars start to add up. Oh, you may come back and say, oh, well, it's me. I'm the guy. I'm the guy that goes out and does the installs. Oh, that's great. Because your time is actually worth more than an employee's time. So you wasting time going to the supply house, driving back, forgetting the plans at the office, trying to download them, but you can't. So you have to go back to the office and get them and come back. Like your inefficiencies is costing you more money. So you have to learn how to be efficient, right? In the military, there's a term, prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. You want to be more profitable, learn how to plan properly. Learn how to put the right people, the right processes, the right systems in place to make sure that you're as efficient as possible. Every job should have a checklist. On that checklist, it should say who's responsible for what. It should also say what materials are responsible for whatever aspect of the job, right? You want to make sure things get done as efficiently as possible, follow a process. You want to be inefficient or continue to be inefficient, go ahead, keep winging it. And number 4, turnover. You all know what I'm talking about. It seems like as soon as you hire them, they're leaving out the back door. Or even better, congratulations, you've been hired. Yay, when do I show up for work? Tomorrow. Except they don't show up for work. You've seen it. You've experienced it. In fact, you're probably going through it right now. How does he know? Because you're not the only one, right? How do we deal with turnover? two things, and I'm going to keep this very high level so you can understand this. The first thing is you need to establish your core values. Who are you as a business? If you don't have core values, you have no center, right? You have nothing to gauge people on. Because your core values, if done right, function like a magnet. A magnet has two ends. One side attracts, one side repels. That's what your core values are meant to do. Our core values, for example, number one, have fun. Why? Because life is hard, business is a grind, doesn't mean you can't have fun doing it. So number one is have fun. Number two is do the work. I don't care what the work is, it's got to get done, so get it done. Do the work. Number three, do what you said you're going to do. My job is not to tell you what to do. My job is hold you accountable to what you committed to doing. And number four, go the extra mile. Whether it's pick up a piece of trash, whether it's hold the door open for the old lady, whatever the thing is, go the extra mile. Those are my core values. So when I interview somebody, I ask questions around my core values. I want to know if they're like me. I want people like me. They don't have to have my personality. They don't have to have my ability to sit in front of a camera and talk for hours on end. They just need to be aligned. Because if I assign a task to somebody and turn my back to do something else, I want to know what's going to get done. Alignment, right? That's how we deal with turnover. The second thing is your hiring process itself. If you don't have a hiring process, create one. It can be super simple, but you need one, okay? Number one, figure out the job description. What role am I hiring for? What are they going to be responsible for? What are my expectations? What's the compensation? Dial all that stuff in. The next thing, get the word out. Social media, Indeed, whatever it is that you're using, get the word out. Number three, don't bring them in for an interview before talking to them on the phone. You will filter through 80% of your people by having a phone conversation. If they can't have a coherent phone conversation with you, in person ain't going to be much better, right? So let's not worry about that. Number four, bring them in, but bring them in for a working interview. Whatever their role is, they should have an idea on how to do the thing that you need them to do. Now, for you more advanced people, I do like to put a little step inside of there, and that's a behavior profile, right? We create job targets for every one of the contractors that we work with, and inside of those job targets, they can fit that behavior and see if they're a match or not, right? If you're smaller, don't worry about it. Do the interview, bring them in for a working interview. During the working interview, ask core value related questions. By the end of that process, you're going to know, one, can they do the job? Two, are they aligned with who we are as a business? By getting people who are more aligned with you and your business, your turnover goes down. So core values, number one, hiring process, number two. We talked about four things. And remember, I told you that I was going to give you the four things that you could take away from this and go and implement inside of your business that would help increase your profits. Now, do you believe that by improving communication, by holding people accountable, by working on your inefficiencies, and by decreasing your turnover, you'll make more money? Go ahead. Challenge me on it. I dare you. You guys know what time it is, though. Take this stuff and go implement it in your business today. 3, 2, 1, off you go.
Thanks for listening to the Success Unleashed podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Until we see you again, it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.